Hi, Garrett Stuckey here with the Startup 360 podcast, where I sit down with startup founders and interview them on a 360 camera so that you can have an immersive experience. So grab a VR headset, put that on, and join us as we converse about Totle today. Please reach out to me, please subscribe. My email is garrett@startup360podcast.com. You can also call me 734-274-9521. Today I've got David Bleznak with Totle, and well, first of all, thanks for being on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett, for having me. Appreciate it.
So, why don't you tell the audience who you are, kind of introduce yourself, and then introduce Totle.
Yeah, so I'm David Bleznak, and I'm the CEO and founder of Totle. We started our concept back in end of 2016, started 2017, and right at the time, Ethereum had really just started to take off in the fundraising space, mostly known as the ICO boom.
Yep.
And so I participated quite a bit in those offerings that were allowed for me to participate in, mostly focused on the decentralized exchange space. So that's really when I was introduced to the first time I traded on a decentralized exchange, and that was EtherDelta. It was a little clunky experience. You had to poke around and manipulate the smart contract, sometimes exposing code and transactions directly to the blockchain. But that experience of using EtherDelta during that time period, 2017, to trade crypto assets, I really felt like was an eye-opening experience. It allowed me for the first time to exchange value with someone somewhere else on the other side of the world, trustlessly, completely. And from then, I became enamored with decentralized exchanges, and then really just tried to study everything that was coming out or that was planned to come out from all the groups that were serious in the space, and found that there were a lot of solutions, right, that were coming about, but there was no way to use all the solutions in one tool. So that was really the first product that Totle started to create.
Okay. So let's before we really dive in,
Sure.
the benefit of a decentralized exchange versus something like Coinbase that's centralized. Do you mind kind of talking a little bit about that, just for those that aren't really in this space?
Yeah. So when you trade crypto or you trade really any asset, most people are used to going to some exchange or some broker. Say E-Trade for your stocks and your bonds, or Coinbase for your crypto assets.
Yep.
So in this case that you just referred to, Coinbase, you're going to go there and deposit your funds. You have to deposit US dollars either through a wire or a bank transfer. Everyone's used to it. Takes 3 to 5 days for it to clear. And in that time, before you buy Bitcoin or buy Ethereum with your money, Coinbase has your assets. You're trusting them.
Yep.
In order to make that purchase. And if you want to withdraw the other assets that you've purchased, then you can go ahead and do that following the trade. But there's still a period of custody where Coinbase has your assets and you're trusting them to return to you the assets that you're looking for or your original assets. Decentralized exchange allows you to not have to trust anyone. You don't have to trust a counterparty to deliver to you or hold on to your assets at any time. So I'll give you an example. There's plenty of decentralized exchange protocols or designs. The most simplest is the original EtherDelta, which is just one smart contract.
Okay.
And you deposit your funds or send your funds to the contract, not to another person. And what that means is basically it's like a programmed escrow on the blockchain.
Okay.
Someone else then comes to the same contract and takes your order. So the first person prefers the best price and is willing to wait a certain amount of time to get that.
Yep.
And the second person prefers not to wait at any meaning. They prioritize their time over whatever price they're paying. So in an exchange, there's always going to be someone who prioritizes time and someone who prioritizes price in any protocol or in any form.
Yep.
And so by having this trustless escrow on the blockchain, you don't have to have counterparty risk in a trade, in an exchange. So that's the main difference right there between a centralized and decentralized exchange. And you can tell by that design inherently that because there's no deposits to a custodian in a decentralized exchange, that a lot of times you don't have as much honeypot risk, or you don't have assets pooled up into one place at one time. You can use many small contracts to make these agreements.
So let's talk about Total then. We have obviously there are lots of decentralized exchanges. How does Total work with those to make it, I guess, easier for the user?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different decentralized exchange protocols that have come out over the past couple of years. And they're very difficult if you're a new user to blockchain to understand immediately. Some require you to collateralize your position. Some require you to do quoting in a certain way, more like over the counter. This would be akin to AirSwap, the protocol. Or some are pooled algorithmic exchanges like Uniswap or Bancor. Some require you to wrap your Ethereum, like the 0x protocol, because Ethereum itself is not an actual ERC20 token, which that exchange protocol only works with. So first you must exchange your Ethereum for something called wrapped Ethereum before you can even begin at that protocol. So there's all these gotchas in the decentralized exchange space. And what Total does is by providing an abstract layer, the user doesn't have to worry about any of these gotchas.
Okay. So Total then, if I want to exchange my Bitcoin for Ethereum even, right? And if I'm going through Total and the best price happens to be on X exchange, then Total is doing the gotchas for me to make that exchange.
Yes, we're finding you the best exchange across all the venues, and that's there's different users, different customers that want different bests. Okay, so you have best price, which is the most obvious, as you were just describing, but you also have best execution. As I was saying before, you may have someone has a much less sensitivity to the price but needs assets now. So it really depends on what the execution and what the customer of ours is trying to accomplish.
Gotcha. And so then how are you, I guess, who are you working with then? Who are your primary customers?
Yeah, great question. So as I kind of alluded to before we started the podcast, we've really veered towards the B2B space, and we really focused on B2B, selling our exchange functionality to other organizations, other companies that need it, other softwares. So the most obvious low-hanging fruit for us in terms of concept was wallets. So if you think about it, these wallet companies that have, and there's lots of them, you can go on the App Store and you can search Ethereum wallet and you'll get several names. If you download those, not all of them, actually, I'd say most of them now, it's become an industry standard to have some exchange functionality in your wallet. And so that right there is the impetus for us to provide that exchange functionality. We take a fee and we share that fee with the wallet company. Now, as I said, that was the obvious conceptual low-hanging fruit, but the issue is now that we found that those who hold in their wallet are much less likely to exchange than those that hold it on, obviously, some sort of exchange platform.
Correct.
So inherently, you're getting way less volume, and though we were able to achieve a lot of integrations quickly, the amount that people are exchanging is much lower than expected. So we've progressed our relationship with more exchange-specific brands.
Gotcha. So there's basically there's a fee added, and you're obviously taking a part of that, and that's how you're making your money. Now, are you keeping that fee in the token that's being charged, or how is Total handling that? Like, hey, I got 0.000, like I got like 3 sats, for example. Are you keeping it in Bitcoin, or how are you?
Total, we keep our fees in Ethereum, though we may collect them in other tokens. Usually it's the receiving token for the fee to be taken. So if you're trading from Ethereum to DAI, then Total would take the fee in the DAI.
Gotcha. All right. And so now we're looking at exchanges, and we're giving exchanges the ability to connect with other exchanges. Why would an exchange with you if they're trying to keep money exchange on their system?
It's a great question. So this was actually a whole concept that kind of we were questioning ourselves, right? Like, why would an exchange want to send orders outside of their own exchange? Like, the benefit that they have is they have all this pooled money there and they make fees on it when it gets traded.
Yep.
Why would they want anything else? Or they would just want more money going in. Well, it turns out we were approached by one of the largest centralized exchanges in the space and asked to offer this to some of their customers. So that was the first go around, and we developed this long proposal, sent it along, and we're still working through that integration process. But in the past 60-90 days, we've taken this proposal to other centralized exchanges. It wasn't something that we went out to first. It was something that was brought to us, so we were able to define that story. And so I can expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah.
So what's happened really over the past few years, or just really since Bitcoin's been around, and exchanges have been around, is that the exchanges really have hoarded assets, right?
Yep.
They've limited the liquidity at the mid-tier. There really aren't mid-tier and smaller exchanges. You kind of see them on CoinMarketCap and you see all these other names, but they don't have liquidity and they don't have assets. And that's really the key right there, is
Gotcha.
that because they've been stranglehold by the top 4 or 5 names, the long tail, medium-sized groups that have all gone through the licensing process, and there's hundreds of these names out there. And at one point there were more exchanges than there were assets, I feel like. And so, now that there are all these exchange brands out there, and they've got all these sign-ups and paid for all this stuff, they don't have any liquidity. And so the painkiller that we're selling now is liquidity for centralized exchanges, which is pretty unbelievable. But if you really think back to when Bitcoin was really coming about, Hal Finney actually wrote in 2010 on Bitcoin Talk that once Bitcoin is successful, that there really won't be transactions person to person. It'll be just as rare as it is today. When he was saying this in 2010, and he said that only banks and large organization institutions would make Bitcoin transactions because they would be the only ones who would have Bitcoin and be able to make that.
That's very prophetic, because you're seeing that, right? Because
it's become a settlement layer. That's really what it is. It's not a payment system for the world and for every individual. We have layer 2 for the coffee, as they say. Really, what this technology is disrupting, and really what it's doing is it's allowing large institutions to not have to be able to trust each other, large transactions to be able to be settled on a blockchain. It's just a shared settlement system. If all these exchanges decide to use the same SQL database, then it would be fine until someone hacked that SQL database. But they're just choosing to use Ethereum, and it really is amazing to see that kind of coming to fruition.
Gotcha. So, kind of a, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Question is, you started out, you really loved the decentralized exchange, and that was one of the benefits that you saw in the cryptocurrency space. And frankly, now you're helping centralized exchanges. How do you feel those two ideologies fit, or is this just like, hey, this is what the market told me and I did it, and which is fine?
It's really the latter, to be
Okay.
honest. Just being transparent. I mean, this is what the market's doing. And I've always been market-driven mentality. I guess I'll be the first to admit that I was way wrong in that, or it hasn't been proven out yet, but I would have thought, right, that the end user would be the benefit of the decentralized exchange. You would see, someone on their phone in India to be able to make a transaction with a DEX, right?
Yep.
And that's the dream, or that's what that's the narrative that people want to believe.
Yeah.
But and I just thought economically that's where it would head, right? But that's not really what we're seeing right now. Not really even close. I mean, because you can't even, forget about decentralized exchanges and whatnot, just with crypto in general, the KYC cancer, if you will, really has created a system that is permissioned in a sense. And I hate to be that bearer, but it's the truth right now. I mean,
Yeah.
and there are combating efforts, but right now it seems like it's very hard to participate unless you are part of the wealthy, and whatnot. So I'm just from an honest. Even you got to be honest with the reality, right? You can't. If you fool yourself, then I'm running a business also, so it's not, you wouldn't be able to, perform for your shareholders. But the reality is, I thought the market would allow individuals at the lowest level to participate with the highest. But really, it's right now we're seeing it being used as a settlement layer for the highest level.
Gotcha. And do you think that over time, as there's more adoption, that smaller and smaller institutions, and to the point where it does become individuals, will participate in something?
I do. I don't think it'll be how we envision it right now.
Yeah.
I can already see that it's like, I was so wrong on that portion that like it's going to be something we can't even comprehend. It's like social media, right? Like if someone said to you and I'm sure the biggest institutions were the first ones to use the internet. Right? I mean, so you think it was a bunch of universities, right, that had the first colleges. So that's my point. Is you're kind of saying the same thing, right? It's going to eventually get down, and the internet wasn't used by people on their phone until a long time. And I think it'll be the same type of thing. Probably happen faster and in a much different way because we have a bigger flow of information today.
Yes.
But it's some way that we can't really. You and I wouldn't. We'd be guessing at something. It's the what's the fallacy, or not the fallacy, but the philosophy about the elephant, where if you have like 6 or 7 people, right, and they're all touching an elephant in a different place. One thinks it's a snake because it's got and one thinks it's a wall because it's got the side of the elephant, and because you can't tell what you're touching until you step back and you see it. And right now it's the same type of thing that's happening with blockchain. Everybody's kind of like, and I'm just seeing like a toe.
Yeah, I really like that. So, so you're connecting these. So we're connecting larger exchanges, and we're helping to these smaller and medium-sized exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me then those exchanges, the large ones have the benefit of, hey, you are exchanging on a decentralized exchange that you can trust when you send 50,000 Bitcoin that it's going, or 50,000 Ethereum tokens that it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It seems though that the customers that are probably also really excited about are these smaller exchanges where it almost becomes a face of a larger exchange.
Yeah,
almost like a white label.
Yep, it's more of a white label. It also it's really a universal settlement layer for them. It's like an interbank system. You have all these interbank communications, and all the banks leverage each other's balance sheets. This is allowing centralized exchanges to do the same thing with their assets. And there's going to be a need. I don't want to downplay the fact that there's no need for centralized exchanges. It's not the case. Mm-hmm. There's a need because there's things you can do with a centralized database right now that's just not really feasible and just not efficient and not economic to do with a blockchain. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have high frequency trading on centralized systems, but to get the underlying reference assets for derivatives. So this was another good way I was explaining it to a family member for this conceptually, because they were asking a similar question. Why would a centralized exchange want these connections? And think about it, for example, I'll use a different type, one of the exchange types, derivatives. Mm-hmm. Okay, we know BitMEX is the largest derivative player, futures seller for Bitcoin. But there's all these other ones, Deribit, other names that are coming online. And really the way that works is that you come with the asset that you want to bet on. So I go to Coinbase, I get my Ethereum, and then I send it to the derivatives market, and then I bet on Ethereum with my Ethereum.
Yep.
Settles on Ethereum, right? So I could bet 100x, and eventually my collateral calls. It's a casino, right?
Yep.
So think about it as all of these different colored chips. And in order to bet on your colored chip, you got to have your colored chip. They're not in the market of getting you the colored chip. You got to go to the ATM, get your chips, come there, gamble, and then you lose it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the advantage for casinos like this. With Totle, it's a hooked up straight cash flow ATM to all of their users to get the chip colors that they need to gamble on. So for derivative markets, it's perfect, because now they've outsourced the exchange functionality, and that's been a hard thing for them to do because, as you mentioned, all these centralized exchanges want all of the assets collateralized with them. So it really opens up the market. I think we'll see a lot more activity in exchange from the ability for them to leverage each other.
Gotcha. And do you see, so there are benefits for these exchanges now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this being something that almost hurts them in the long run, where now we've introduced this idea of decentralized exchange to
That's
all the people part of our exchange, and like today it's great, but
like
over
you
time,
lead a horse to water,
yeah,
and they might start drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I could see that, but I really, we're having these conversations with these organizations directly, and at the end of the day, what it comes down to, and I can't predict the future, but what I can say is that people are already exchanging on decentralized exchanges, so the volume's tripled since January this year on decentralized exchanges. Yeah,
okay.
So because people are already doing it in the brand, the centralized exchange, in their mind, right? In the brand's mind, it's a way for them to participate in something people are already doing. You see what I'm saying? Yep. It's like we want our piece of that pie also, not in if we teach them. It's more we're going to offer this. If you want to trade like this, they're not going to. And if people already are, this allows them to do that with their brand.
Gotcha. So it's more of a customer retention piece.
Exactly.
Okay. And because when I think about myself, right, I have participated in a few centralized exchanges. I have a wallet, like a hardware wallet, but I also like that adoption piece when I compare our knowledge, right? I am a basic crypto coin user, currency user. You are obviously much more advanced. There's a lot of things that you're able to do that I can't. So I can see how these centralized, and I think Coinbase is a great example, right? They're really like, hey, we make it really easy, possible, right? So I guess what I'm saying is like that business I think will be there for a long time of taking somebody from nothing to introducing them to cryptocurrencies.
Sure.
When you've been talking to these exchanges, what are some things that you're learning that either, don't get in trouble, but like that is kind of like behind the curtain, something that's like really interesting that you're learning about in this space?
Well, that's a good one. I'll give you a couple. I think that you can never be too careful. And I don't mean that just like in the cliche, like to be paranoid. I just mean like that you can never be too careful in OPSEC, in security, in all of these things.
Yep.
So just you might as well. That's the one is that always be doing your 2FA. Always have a plan for getting hacked or phishing and stuff like that. And then number two would be I would say Pareto is a really, really big one on my mind, and that's the Pareto efficiency.
Yeah.
There's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And I think when you asked specifically, I'm specific
why does
here.
that come up here?
Because you asked what behind the curtains, and I'm saying that I've always kind of thought, it's been a philosophy of mine, and looking behind the curtains, that it exists to the furthest. If you look behind the curtains in any of these places, nobody knows anything more than anyone else.
Gotcha.
Okay? I didn't mean like nobody knows anything. These people are very smart at these organizations, but everybody's very smart in this space. And you said that I can do a lot of things you can't. I don't even really believe that, and I don't want you to believe that. But I don't think you do. I think you were being kind. But I think that you can figure out 99% of the things that I
could catch up to you.
Yeah.
To your point.
Yeah.
But I'm not at your point, which is my point.
Okay, maybe at this moment I take that fairly. But I push back on the Pareto part.
Yeah.
80-20. 20% of the effort is going to be 80% of the outcome. Get to 80%. And move to the next. It's like be in the real world is good enough, more than good enough, and that's all the way. As long as you're doing the first part of what I said, which is the OPSEC and making sure your back's covered, 80% is enough to get you from here to 0 to 60.
Awesome. And so how is that impacting Total? What are some things that you're doing? Just
That's another great question. I think we're stepping outside of our comfort zones because as individuals, I mean, as a group, we're just a group of individuals. So I know that's a little cliche, but I'm just saying that the individuals each of them are stepping out of their comfort zone to do something that maybe that they isn't their job, maybe isn't, the first thing that's asked of them, but getting, again, doing the 20 to get the 80 on something that is really going to move the needle for us, and I think that's how it affects us. I think it's a mentality for our whole business.
That's really cool. I really like that. So we're kind of getting to time here a bit. So before we hit the
I'm
fire
really
section,
enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, I know. I could.
We could sit here. We could do this for a couple of days.
We could. No, this is one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I get you in a room and we get to talk like this. I'm learning so much, and
me as well.
And it's really fantastic. So before I do the rapid fire questions, which are not as related to what we've been talking about. What is something that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure we bring up? And I will give you a moment later to pitch. So what's something, just an interesting thing maybe that we haven't discussed?
Buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Absolutely.
it's important. I mean, I'm not just saying it again, not as a tweet here on the, to give you. I just think that it's important to buy Bitcoin. And it's more than the dollar amount. It's the process of going through and buying Bitcoin and seeing how to have sovereign money and what that means and what does that mean to you. And maybe you'll learn that you want your money at Coinbase because you don't trust yourself with keys. That's really, really important to know about yourself at this point in time in society. So buy Bitcoin.
I love it. Yeah, I totally agree with you that everybody should buy some Bitcoin. Awesome. All right, rapid fire. So first question is, what is your best habit?
Best habit's being on time.
Nice. What is... You were a little late today, weren't you?
1:30 on the dot. You were early.
Oh, you were... You know what? I wasn't watching time. My bad.
It's not your bad.
No, were you? I didn't watch it. I know I was early. I don't know if you were late.
I was at 1:30.
Nice. I'm going to take a moment. I stand corrected. I am wrong.
You didn't correct me though. You just laughed.
Well, I was like, no. I was thinking back, and I was like, wait,
Wasn't
did
he?
he? Was he? He was on the phone, but did he show up at 1:30? I didn't look at my watch. I didn't really care. He was here. I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, you're like late here, like you're, or. Damn it. Anyways, for the record, you are on time. On the flip side, what is something you're bad at, and how do you fix it?
I'm bad at communicating my emotions.
And how do you fix that?
Staff a therapist. No, there's that. But no, I mean it's humility. It's just constantly, as we were just talking about a few minutes ago, not thinking that you're better than anyone else at anything.
Yeah. No, I thought you did a really good job with that.
Thank you.
Clearly, you're thinking about it and trying to improve. So, awesome. Third question is, what is your advice to the high school graduate, college graduate, and the 50-year-old?
High school graduate, think practical. And as we're talking, I think the number one most important thing for high school graduates is that Pareto that we were talking about before. College graduates, immerse yourself in something. And it's a job. Go learn for someone. Go work for free. Go find something that you figure out what it is that you really, really love, and don't listen to anyone else but yourself. And then for the 50-year-old,
yep.
I'm not 50 yet, so that's a really tough one. But I like the question.
Yeah, it is hard to give advice to somebody that is older than you.
I would say enjoy life.
Enjoy life.
And I'll just caveat that may change over time. I don't know. I'm not 50 yet, but I that's a good one to think about. Awesome. I like the exercise.
Thanks. And for all three, buy Bitcoin.
Definitely buy Bitcoin.
Fourth question: who has been the kindest person in your life?
The kindest?
Yes.
It's definitely my wife.
Your wife?
There's no question on the kindest, yeah. She's got the heart, I got the brain. That's the only reason, we're halves. We're halves.
Awesome. That's great. How long have you guys been married?
We've been married for 2 years, just over 2 years, and we've been together for 5.
Wonderful. Awesome. It's good when the wife comes up.
And it was natural.
Yeah, it was. That was really good.
You asked the question.
Yeah,
Teed it up.
And I did not tell you about this ahead of time, so
not premeditated.
Mrs. Bleznak, he's not lying. At least not today. Awesome. And then my last question is, what is one question you think I should ask all of my guests?
I think you should ask all of your guests, what is the meaning of life?
Okay. So, what's the meaning of life?
Oh, that's good. You threw it right back.
I did.
Only right now we know not die. We don't know what comes after that.
So just don't die is the meaning of it. Yeah. All right. Awesome. No, that's a really good question. So, thank you again for being on here. So how do we get, so I guess, so 2 questions. How does the audience get a hold of you, and how does the audience help you? So how do we get connected with Totle?
Yeah, so you can reach me directly at david@totle.com, TOTLE.com. You can also go to our website, totle.com. You can make swaps. You can exchange ERC20 tokens directly from our swap product,
Okay.
right from our site. And you can also like our social media pages. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Reddit. Yeah, if you're interested in investing in crypto companies, in blockchain exchange infrastructure, you can reach out to me directly or set up a time.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you again. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed it, so I appreciate your time a lot.
Hey, likewise, you exceeded my expectations, guy. Appreciate you.
Good. Well, thank you. Please go to total.com, reach out to David, follow him on social media. Same for me. Please subscribe on YouTube, give us a comment, like, share, and